Well, that was easy. Okay. Jack, should we go ahead and get started? We got a lot to get through.
Let's do it. So welcome to everyone. Thanks for joining us for what I think is going to be an interesting next hour. You say you want a leadership revolution. So I know you all have the Beatles song in your head now. You're welcome. Yeah. But I want to get us started by just saying thanks for being here. We always appreciate you joining us, tuning in, seeing what we have to say, and we love hearing what you have to say. So we like to make really all the channels open for you to share with us what's on your mind over the next hour. The chat is open to you. Courtney has posed a question out there. What are you looking forward to hearing about today? So please take a minute, think about it, and put your thoughts in the chat there. I will be watching that chat the whole time and kind of seeing what your questions are and what you're thinking about. So feel free to do that. You're also free, if you choose, you could interrupt us. It's always a little bit awkward, and we do that dance where we can't, we talk over top of each other for a second. But if you really have something on your mind, or you want to pause us and ask a question, you can do that. We don't forbid that. But we will also pause at the end and kind of see what kind of questions you have. So if you want to hold questions till then, that'll be fine as well. And I want to thank, we had a few people turn in some questions to us prior to this event. So we got those, we're thinking about those. And I think for the most part, in looking through those questions, I think you're going to get an answer, or at least a partial answer to your questions today. But I might be pointing those out as we go through. So thanks for those. All right, so just in the way of sort of a formal introduction, I know some of you, I see some familiar faces out there, so I know a lot of you know who we are, but just a way of quick introduction. I'm Jackie Pelland, and we also have Courtney.
Courtney Smock.
There she is, Courtney Smock. So we are partners at Slingshot 25, and you can see, say that again. Okay, so we're partners at Slingshot 25, and you can see that I'm kind of the leadership person. That's sort of my bag. I'm a leadership coach, and Courtney, her expertise is in change. So the two of us together come together like chocolate and peanut butter, and bring you hopefully some really interesting insights for running your organizations. And today we're going to talk about this thing called a leadership revolution. And I'll get us started just by making a really profound statement. Leaders and leadership increases the value of your organization. It's not hard. It's not a hard theory. Leadership increases the value of your organization. Every day, leaders in your organization are making hundreds, if not thousands, depending on the size of your organization. They're making hundreds, if not thousands of decisions. And whether those decisions support the aims of your organization or work at cross purposes to the aims of your organization is what we're after today, is thinking about how leaders directly influence the performance of your organization. And we're going to talk about, and we'll cover a lot of territory today, but we're going to talk about how you can create a discipline around leadership development that will really enable the performance of your organization. Because that's, although it's not, it's very simple to say leadership creates value in the performance of your organization. What's not easy, what's not so straightforward is how do you develop those leaders so that happens. All right, so Courtney, you're gonna tell the group a little bit about sort of our career and how we got here, that we are talking about these sorts of things with you today.
Yeah, so for those of you that know us, you know our story, but we have a lot of new folks on the line, so I'm gonna do just a quick introduction. Slingshot 25 is an organization that's focused on training and developing leadership and change skills, whether that's with your leaders, your change people, your HR professionals. And we really have been doing this what feels like forever. Jackie and I both came from corporate and left. All of our time in corporate was dealing with the messiest problems in business. So we have worked on large scale integrations. We have worked on leader programs. Every place, when we say messy, like insert the word people, because people are messy. People require clarity, they require direction, they require leadership, and that is our sweet spot. And so we left corporate and continued the work that we had done there in Slingshot. So we really understand what it means to lead. We understand how challenging of a job that is, and we understand how important it is to the business. And we love, love, love working with people to change how they think about their role when they're a leader and accept responsibility for how the environment of their teams work. So we teach you a little bit of how and a whole lot of how to think about who you are and what you do. So it's Slingshot's all about. So we are thrilled you are here. If you want to go to the next slide, our slide flipper. Before we get into the content, we do want to show you some of the products and services we offer. So we're a training and leadership company for change and leadership. So we have training offerings. We have the Truth of Leading Others is our leadership flagship project. We have the change course, which is designed to help organizations mature their capability to lead change. And then we do leadership coaching and we do talks. And so anything in that space that's about creating expectations, teaching skills, and really helping leaders think about their role, that's the business we're in. And right now we have a class that's starting in October that we want to tell you about before the end of the session. Next slide. That is called a crash course in change. The change course is designed to build change practitioners. It's a bigger class. It's an experience that lasts 3 months and really builds change capability in your organization. And we're asked to build something for organizations and for people that are just getting started in change. Maybe they haven't done the role before. Maybe you're working in a company where you just got a lot of change going on and everybody's doing their best, but you'd like some more insights on how to get started, how to move the organization forward, what to do. So starting October 19th, we're doing a crash course, like introductions to the expectations, introduce some foundational principles. So if you or someone in your organization would be interested in that, you can check it out at slingshot25.com. Okay, enough of that. Let's go ahead and jump in, Jack. I'm going to swing it back to you and let's get into why leadership even matters anyway. Who cares?
Well, I care. And I hope you care too. And here's some stats that if you don't already care, this should get your attention. So these stats come from company. I mean, you guys probably read some of the same research that I do and a lot of the same articles. Harvard Business Review and McKinsey and MIT and all of these people are constantly putting out, data, information about why leadership really matters. So I think it's important that we just pause here for a second before we really dive in and talk about how to really generate improvements in your leadership in your organization. Let's just stop and think about why the investment is so important to begin with. And here's some stats that should catch your attention a little bit from places like McKinsey and the Gallup organization that are constantly doing surveys and research across organizations, large organizations and small organizations around the globe. And as I look at these sort of stats, these are the kinds of things that I obsess about and think about all the time, and think about how to help people like you to create a leadership, a leadership performance level in your organization so that you can reap the benefits of these sorts of things. I started this conversation today by saying great leadership is what creates great performance in your organization. That is not, the jury's not out on that. We know this. That's the simple part of this formula. What is not so simple is how to do it. That's hard. Courtney, you said messy. We deal with messy problems. This is absolutely one of those messy problems, is how to actually create a great leadership programming in your organization so that you really get there. And we caution against dabbling. We're not much for dabbling with leadership development. And I know it happens and I know why it happens. Courtney shared with you that we come out of some large organizations ourselves, and things get complicated, and things get, there's a lot of priorities and a lot of tensions in the organization. It can be hard to put together really strong, cohesive leadership development programming It really works. You can get started, and then, I mean, you know, you've I know many of you have lived through these sorts of things. You get started, and then a sudden change sweeps through the marketplace, or you're acquired, or there's some other, you know, sort of major activity that shuffles things up again. This is not easy. This is not easy stuff to do, and we recognize that. But one of the things that you'll hear as a theme today is, in order to really do this in your organization, is you can't really dabble at leadership development. You need to think more holistically, more comprehensively about how to create what we call a movement. And we called it a leadership revolution in the title, but we call it a movement inside your organization, to create a leadership movement. And to really do this, you need to move beyond. Here's like your first lesson of the day, first lesson of this hour. You have to move beyond the top 5%. Now, for those of you who are sitting out there in really large organizations, you're going to know what I'm talking about. It's really common that there's a heavy investment in the top 5% of leaders in your organization. And there's nothing wrong, by the way, with investing in them. You just can't stop there. You can't stop at that top 5%. It takes a much more critical mass, and we'll sort of peel all this back here in just a minute, but I'll let you know right away. We had a question from someone who's joined our session today about, how do you influence your leadership from the bottom up? Well, we are big fans of influencing from the bottom up, but we're also understanding, and we're very practical about the need from the top down as well. Both of those things have to be happening at the same time. In order to get to critical mass, though, to get to where the changes that you're making in the performance of your leaders will stick in the organization, you have to get to this thing we call critical mass. And it's not an exact science of what critical mass is, but I'll tell you, it's more than the top 5%. It's more than your high potential program. It's thinking about leadership at every level of your organization, so that you are finding people at the foundation of your organization that have amazing leadership skills, connecting those to the strategy of leadership development in your organization. In other words, you need a leadership movement. So let's talk about what that is. Let's flip us to the next slide and start to unpack that. So here it is. Here's the architecture of a leadership movement. 4 simple steps. What could be easier?
Done.
The problem is, what could be easier? You have this done by noon. What's the problem? Each and every one of these, of course, comes with some entanglements, and that's really why we're here today talking to you. We know that you signed up for this hour because you're hoping to get some insights about how to tackle these things in your organization. I also know that as I know you're reading through some of these, some of these things right now, sort of looking at the architecture here, and you might be thinking, I already have some of these, and I bet you do. I bet you already have some pieces of this architecture in place. And so today we'll hopefully leave you with some insight about how to weave these things together. And this is not something that's done by noon. It's not figured out by noon. It's not, and it can take a long time to roll this across your organization. This is not something that is done in a month or a matter of a few weeks, of course, depending on the size of your organization. So let's work our way around these steps and tackle them one by one. So let's take a look at the first one, if we want to add a little bit of detail to that first step. So the first step in creating this movement, in essentially, creating an architecture by which you are going to lift the performance of all the leaders in your organization, not just the top 5%, but all the leaders in your organization, is you have to start with lift their performance in what regard? Like, what are the specific behaviors that we in our organization, this is where it gets unique to your organization. What are the exact leadership behaviors that we want to go after? Now, you might realize that what is the famous saying? Leadership is a little bit of a game of horseshoes and hand grenades, right? Close enough is close enough. There's no single leadership behavior that is mutually exclusive from all other leadership behaviors. That's for sure. That's for sure. Human behavior is messy. It's not that clean. But it is about understanding and prioritizing what are the leadership behaviors that are most important to our organization. And let me tell you, one of the things that we often see here that gets people kind of tangled up in knots from the very beginning. And so this will be a bit of insight for you to take away and take a look around your organization and think about where you're at with this, is we get really excited about really long lists of leadership competencies. And I'm going to guess there's a few people on this call that know what I'm talking about. There are literally hundreds of competencies out there for leaders. And it's about, and we like to think that if we leave something off, then that means that leaders don't have to do that thing. And so I think that we sort of talk ourselves into creating these, sort of enormous lists of competencies for all of the leaders in our organization because we're afraid to leave anything out. There's nothing wrong, by the way, with having some leadership for having lists of leadership competencies, maybe for like job descriptions and things like this. But when it comes to creating a movement, when it comes to creating something that is disruptive, something that is noticeable, something that is new, something that is fresh, something that drives some inspiration into your organization and says, we're asking you to step up in a different way. Long lists of alphabet soup competencies is not going to do it. It's just not going to do it. So the first step is to assemble the senior leaders, right? This is where senior leaders do need to be involved. Assemble the senior leaders and take a look at your strategy, your organization strategy. Now, for some of you who are in really large organizations, that is equally complex. But to take a look at the strategy and think about what kind of leadership behaviors do we need most? We need many, right? The whole list of competencies is still true. But which ones do we need most right now? Which ones are most important right now? It doesn't mean, it could mean that, 5 or 10 years from now, it could be a different set. But right now, today, what is the priority of the behaviors that we need to create the change that we seek to make in our organization? And that should be tied to your strategy. For example, do you need leadership behaviors right now that inspire and engage people in innovation? That's a very different thing than having leadership behaviors that are much more focused on, say, commitment or inclusion. Thinking through what are the most important leadership behaviors. And this is where you don't want to go more than 5, right? Like 3 to 5 behaviors that create a story of focus, something to pursue. So that's all about just getting the behaviors right. So let's take a look at the next step, and I think I'll let Courtney talk about that one.
Yeah, I want to add one thing to the leadership behavior. The other thing that I would caution you against is turning that discussion into a science project. Like, get clear, follow your energy, force discussion so that people have context for what those words mean. And then good enough is good enough. You will never find the perfect 4 words, the perfect phrases. If you do get them perfect, you probably spent too long trying to figure it out. Find meaning, get clear, and move, because whatever word you pick is going to have 5 different versions and there's other stuff going on. It's much better to have one you're all comfortable with, you have energy on, that you can create clarity around, and then go. Overbaking the first step 1 will cost you a lot of time and not giving you a lot of benefit. The second step is identifying key influencers to lead the way. And this is, from a strategic standpoint, this is maybe a very different way of thinking about how you actually create leadership for all. Because ironically, the very first step is to think about the few. Where are you going to start? You don't actually need everyone in the beginning. What you need in the beginning are a few people who, and these people are in your organization. You have people who care an awful lot. You have people that want to be part of something. You have people that want to put their thumbprint, their imprint, their heart stamp on what it feels like to work in your organization. You have people who want to make it better. Find those people and recruit them to be your army, 5 to 15% of people to start with, to train, to motivate, and probably most importantly, to believe that it can be better, to believe that it can change. Because when you get that ball rolling and you empower people to be part of creating something great, when you give them space and latitude to make decisions and be influenced and make an impact and make a difference, watch out. You don't have to work that hard, right? But it takes understanding that the way you start a movement is not by trying to lift up the whole organization and get 5,000 leaders or 500 leaders or 30 leaders to move all at once. Where do we start? And we start with appealing to people, seeing them. The top 5%, there's a few, but these are people throughout your organization. It's the middle, it's the new, it's the senior, it's a mix, right? What you're looking for is not about their title, not about their tenure, not about those things, but where are their passions? Where's their energy? Where's their untapped potential? And what might they do if you put them in a little room with a little bit of, decision-making authority to say, hey, let's go create something that people want to be a part of. Let's go lead in the way that it feels great to work here. Let's go make this a company where people want to work because of how they get treated by the leaders in this organization. And guess what? You hired talented, smart people. They're going to figure stuff out. And so identifying those key influencers, like that step is probably going to, for some organizations, it's going to be a real challenge because you have your go-to people, the same people that you go to all the time. They may be part of your team, but they may not. Be curious, get creative, stretch your comfort zone, and create a batch of people that we did with ones called a lead-in team, like who's going to go first. And that group will start doing things, start leading, demonstrating to others what the future could be. And through this idea, it's an influencing principle of social proof. People are going to look around and say, what's happening over there? I want to be a part of that. Can I get that too? And that snowball starts to roll, but it starts identifying the key influencers. Jack, anything you'd add?
No, I don't have anything specific to add to that, Courtney. I think you covered it pretty well. It is.
I love my influencers. It's my favorite part of the game.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess, okay, the one thing I will add, I always have.
I knew she had something.
Who are we kidding?
Who are we kidding?
The person who asked the question about how do you influence from the bottom of the organization up, here it is again. This is how we think about leadership and making a movement. We don't leave out the top 5%. We're not that revolutionary. We're not unhinged. But it's also about powering an organization from every single level. You have leaders at every single level. And I would see this a lot when I was dealing with creating leadership programming inside organizations. Would be, the focus again would be on the top 5% or just the high potentials. And the foundational level of leadership in your organizations oftentimes gets short shrift. They get the CBTs, they get just they get them the video training or something. Nothing wrong with video training and computer-based training. Those can be really great tools. But when you think about it, everyone in your organization, almost everyone in your organization reports to the front line. Almost everyone in your organization reports to the front line. There is a ton of leading that happens at that level, a ton of decisions that get made at that level. And those decisions will either increase the performance of your organization or detract from the performance of your organization. It is important that a lot of the target of a leadership movement happens at the foundational level, because that's where your organization reports to. And we get caught in this, like, are they, leading versus managing? And the trap we get caught in is that management is lower paid and lower in the organization, and leaders are higher paid and higher in the organization. That's what ends up happening. And so we just steer away from that conversation altogether and say, get everyone involved. There is leadership happening at every level of your organization.
Yeah.
And I will also add on point number 1. So I'm going to back us up again. I was just thinking about, Courtney, your point of don't overwork this thing. Be good, be clear and be, and spend some time talking about it. But I will let you know that if it doesn't form an acronym, it's okay. You don't need to make your leadership model or your leadership, the behaviors of your movement form an acronym. We're not impressed by acronyms anymore. So
You should
don't worry
check
about
it though, because sometimes you get an acronym you don't want. So it's a
that.
double check both directions. Do a
Yeah, at least that
positive and a
happened
negative
once.
check on that.
Yeah, make sure that people can't arrange it into an acronym you don't want. All right, let's talk about point number 3. Let's look at some details on the third step of creating a leadership movement in your organization, a leadership revolution, if you will. And this one's my favorite. Anyone who knows me knows that this one is where I spend my time. This one is my jam. I love getting in a classroom, or what I like to call an inspiration lab, with your leaders and talking to them about what it means to be an amazing leader, of being the kind of leader that people will follow, even if they don't have to. This is what I love to do. And it's a big part of the movement. There is no doubt this is a big part of the movement. Now, some of you will come from organizations where you've got people inside the organization that do this for you. You've got trainers, facilitators, you've got program designers, you've got incredibly talented people that can build these things and deploy these things for you. That's amazing. Good for you. Do a good job with it. Here's some pointers for how to do a great job with that programming. Many of you will find people external to your organization to come in and help you with that. And of course, I'm one of those people. I would love to be the person that comes in and helps you with this, because this is how we think about the kind of programming that will bring to your movement, the kind of programming that you need in your movement to genuinely move things forward, or it'll be like hitting sludge at this step. Like there's, if you're using like what I call ye old leadership training that doesn't really address the things you need it to address, you can really start to hit some tension and some sludge in this area of your movement. Get good programming, get great leadership learning programming. And I've listed there, take a picture of that, write those things down. If you're in shopping for some leadership development right now, or designing it yourself, write those down. Those are important elements to have in your programming. A couple of them that I will call out. The first one is mindsets. You've got to address mindsets as sure as you address skills. And this is kind of gets into this, got to include some coaching in your leadership learning. As a matter of fact, we talk about teaching leaders to think differently. One of my favorite sayings right now is, we don't need more leadership technique. If you want leadership technique, just go to Google. Google is loaded with all the leadership technique you might want. It's not about more leadership technique. Technique's not unimportant, but it's not about more leadership technique. It's about teaching leaders to think differently. When you teach leaders to think differently, in every scenario, they will act differently. Trying to do it in the reverse order doesn't always work. Teaching leaders technique without the underlying substantive thinking, you'll just get performative leadership. You will get people who perform, like acting, thank you, but it's not actually connected deeply to showing up as a leader in the moment. So
Jack,
I want
give
you
them
to
an example of hey, Jackie.
Yeah.
Give them an example of a technique.
So a technique, here's a technique. It's one I like to teach all the time. It's the one I typically will bring up. I like to bring it up because it's actually a really good technique, and I suggest you try it. Here's a technique. When you are in a conversation with someone, try not to give advice for 60 seconds. I'm just going to let that sit for a second. You're all like, that sounds really stupid. That's easy. Is it? Is it so easy? And the reason I offer up that technique, that's an example of a technique. You could just performatively do that. But the reason that I offer up that technique is because it's anchored to, and this is what we love to teach, is the thinking behind it, which is empathy, curiosity, humility, belief in others. Those are substantive skills. Those are the kinds of things that there's a lot of different techniques you could use to bring those things out, but it's best, let's ground leaders in those substantive skills. And humility is a skill. Empathy is a skill. Curiosity, it's a skill. Believing in others, skills. These are the kinds of things that we teach. Teaching to show up in every moment differently. So practicing the technique of not giving advice for 60 seconds is driving to those more substantive skills of humility and curiosity, frankly, belief in others as well. So techniques are fine, but if they're not rooted in the more substantive skills, the much deeper sort of learning to think differently, the difference between great leaders and everyone else is they think differently. Great leaders think differently. They understand that their success is defined by their followers. So look for programming that gets at that level of skill building in your leaders. I would, there's been leadership development came into its own in like the late 80s and then through the 90s. And so, we want to get you want to look for programming that is in a place for the future, is teaching leaders how to show up for the people that they serve. Actually, the topic servant leadership, you've all heard of servant leadership. That's been around since 1972. Robert Greenleaf coined that term in 1972. But we have not really made servant leadership a really big part of our leadership ecosystems. And so this is about finding those underlying skill sets and underlying ways of thinking that you genuinely show up as that kind of a leader. The other thing I'll just point out really quickly before we take a look at the last part of the architecture is rapid start is important. You see the point there of rapid start, but realistic in the overall time frame. One of the things that we look for in creating a movement is to get some sort of impact happening within the first 6 to 9 months. The first 6 to 9 months is where you want to have something needs to feel differently. Your movement will not be complete in 6 to 9 months. It very likely may just be it's starting to really get some traction. But people, if you don't get like something noticeable, something changing about the environment in 6 to 9 months, they'll start to tune you out. They will start to see it as just one more thing that doesn't go anywhere. But truly turning an organization around, really upskilling and changing the performance of your leaders at every level is a long game. And be ready for the long game. Be ready to stick with them, to keep your educational activities happening. But the first 6 to 9 months, you'll definitely want to have some sort of impact, something visible for people in the organization to see.
Yeah. The other thing that's coming up for me, and Jack, we didn't talk about this, but I think a lot of leadership programs are start and finished at step 3. Like you shop for a training program, you put people through a training program, they went through the training, and we're on to the next thing. So I hope as you pull back and we show you like step 1, that your organization is bought into where you're, is pointing the direction. Step 2, you have people mobilized around where you want to go. It's really step 3 before you pick the vehicle that you're going to ride in to get you there. And I maybe you guys want to chime in the comments or whatever, but I'm curious. Most people I think have experienced just step 3. What training are we getting? Let's get them to training. And what's ironic maybe in all of step 1, 2, 3 is step 4 is actually where the work starts, in my opinion, to set this direction, get people involved, pick your vehicle to ride in. How are we going to teach people the skills we want them to have? In step 4, you align, if you want to go to the next notes, you align your whole organization to that thing. And it takes, it's where you do your sustainments. It's where you do your maintenance. It's where you do your re-up. It's where you have to recommit and remember, what did we say we were doing? It's where you teach your leaders how to hold their people accountable to the new behaviors that we said in step 1 we want to emulate in this organization. right? So we said we want to be more brave, okay? Pick one, I love brave. We found some people that are passionate about that. We sent them to training, we gave them the skills, and guess what? In step 4, nobody's actually doing it. Or we're seeing behaviors that are absolutely counter to what the poster we printed and put on the wall that said these are behaviors. We're not big fans of posters, by the way. And so it's in step 4 that we start to integrate everything that we said we were doing in this movement into our entire organization. You see evidence of it in whatever you're using for performance management. When we talk to people about how they're performing, how they're doing, whether or not they're meeting expectations, when we decide who we reward, it aligns to those things we said we expect in their behaviors. If people aren't being brave, if people aren't being kind, if people aren't being innovative, and that's what we said we need from them, then we're going to have a leader who's skilled enough because they've been through training to be curious and empathetic and mind and help that employee who's behaving in a way that goes against what we said, has a conversation that holds them accountable to what we want. Oh my gosh, that is so much harder, by the way, than sending people through a training class. Living and walking and doing the things every day, really, as a leadership team who said we wanted that, sitting around maybe on a quarterly basis and saying, how are we doing? Like we said we wanted this, we went to the training, nobody on this team's even doing it. So how can we expect our followers to do it? Challenging ourselves to say, and being honest, right, about are we actually living up to what we said we want to be? And one of the things you need to understand is what you put on those posters matters, because when you have things on your posters, you picked your leadership behaviors, you said what you valued, you asked people to be part of your initiative, you train them to do it. In step 4, if you allow them to behave in ways that conflict with that, you erode trust in your organization faster than anything. When we say trust matters here, and nobody trusts anybody on your team, you create permission for your entire organization to behave in ways that are not what you want. You invite people to be more selfish. You invite people to do the best thing for, they're less likely to be transparent and honest. They are more likely to act in the interest of their team versus the greater good of the company. Because that when you break trust in an organization, that's how people start to behave. So this step 4 of aligning your performance management system, how expectations are set with people and how they're held accountable to it, who you promote. I'm sorry, if there's anyone on this call who hasn't watched someone be promoted that doesn't live the values of the company they work in, I think it'd be a short list. You all have evidence, either you've lived with it, worked with it, or seen it, where we say we value whatever, and the person who exemplifies none of that is who we promoted. You have to have you have to have evidence in every system of your company that says, we said we value this, and we promote people who have those behaviors. And people who are not behaving in the way that's aligned with our values, we don't reward them anymore. We coach them, we help them, we set expectations, we train them. But if they really can't get on board with that, they don't work here. We don't promote them. Right? So step 4, aligning your movement, aligning what you said, what you're going to do, giving people the skills, refreshing those skills, and honestly, just holding your organization accountable to what you said you value. That's the kicker. I mean, that's where the work is. That's the hard part. That's the day-to-day in every conversation that your leaders have. That's where that stuff happens. I think that's all I want to say about that. Jackie, what would you add?
I would add, 4 easy steps to your leadership movement in your organization. Like, this is not easy, right? This isn't easy. We've had some experience working with, these kinds of movements in organizations and still screw it up. Let's be honest. This is hard. This is really complex stuff. So the things that Courtney's mentioning about, not promoting people who don't visibly show the values and the behaviors that you're trying to make happen in your organization, make them come alive in your organization. nobody does that intentionally. Nobody, intentionally promotes someone that is like that. There's a lot of, there's a lot of things that come together, a lot of complexities that you're trying to sort through. So, and mistakes get made, and one step forward, two steps back some days. All of that is normal. All of that is completely normal for, creating these kinds of movements in your organization. So I don't want you in any circumstance to feel like, oh, I really haven't got this figured out. No one has it entirely figured out. I will tell you that. I mean, the model is there, the outline, the architecture is there. Executing on each one of these steps is tangly and difficult and imperfect. Oh my goodness, imperfect. Give yourself some grace. Give your organization some grace, to explore, to try some things out. And just to keep our effort is always to bring what we call the truth at the bottom of everything to you, so that it can offer some guidance to you, as you sort of bang around in these very complex spaces. And I think that also highlights the kind of people that you should get involved in helping you with these movements. I was thinking about even like the classroom stuff. I said I called them inspiration labs. Get someone at the front of the room that can kind of light people up and get people invested and curious, and that create a sense of invitation to the participants of the classroom. So be really mindful about, all the way back to step 2, where you're kind of figuring out who your influencers are, and start thinking about who are those kind of people who others are drawn to, like the kind of people that others will follow just because they want to, not because they have to. Maybe that might be overriding one of the best things you can do for yourself in this whole movement, is to think about, who stands up and invites others. So there they all are, though. 4 simple steps. It's 4 simple steps that are very hard to do.
As we're recapping, I'm going to recap here. Will you guys, any questions, comments, observations? Would you guys put them in the chat? Because we're happy to expand on any of this. But let's go ahead into the recap here. Next slide. So leadership movements work when they create a focus on the behaviors that you need. At the end of the day, a leadership movement is shifting your culture. Your culture is the simplest definition of culture for us is people like us do things like this. So it's all about behavior. It's about what you do, not what you say, not what you put on a a poster, although you could put it on a postcard. It's about what you do every day. When your employee doesn't perform the way you thought, when someone's late, when there's a conflict. Do you respond? Do your leaders respond? Do you have confidence that people in your organization, that they all will respond, as we said in this organization we went to, which is with empathy, curiosity, belief in the other person? It's about those behaviors. So your first step, you got to get focused on that. Where your organization is today, you have a strat plan that says they want to go somewhere else. At your leadership table, you have to talk about what are the 3 to 5 behaviors that are going to take us from here to there. And we're going to focus on those. Jackie already talked about this a lot, but you're implementing at scale. If you're going to implement at scale, it means you have to have a systemic way to think about your entire organization. And that means individual contributor, middle, and top, a mix. Look at the attributes of the person and their potential, much more than their job title and what they say they want. Maybe that's not the right way to say it. And then the last part, and I think, I don't know if it's overkill, but I think you get the point that the commitment to this, the long-term nature of it, is required to make this work. You cannot expect that, and honestly, you're not going to get any return on investment for your money. You're not going to have people who feel good about like going to a training class is an investment, right? It's an opportunity. If my employer is going to send me to that class, it's great. And people are excited about it. And some of your organizations, people are probably like fighting to be the one who gets to go. If you're going to invest in that, you're not going to get your return on it unless you commit to having an environment where people who go to those classes can come back and behave the way that was talked about in the training class and be rewarded and supported in that. And that means that the leader who helped write the values at the beginning has to be able to sit with that person and reward them and encourage them to keep behaving in the way that we said was going to get us to the next level. And that's going to require coaching skills and all of those things to do it. And it's going to take us doing that forever, right? From here on, it will pursue until. Right? So it's focus, scale, and commitment. Those are the things that you want to think about to really make this work. I'm curious. That's all I have to say about that. Jackie, anything you want to add, or do we want to take a question?
I feel like we've made our case.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Well done.
We'll see. We'll see. So if we want to take us to the next slide, one thing I would like to share with you, and then we'll sort of open it up for questions and see what else comes up for you all, is I wanted to share with you you saw this on the slide where we were showing you sort of some of the things that we can do for you, that we love working with people like you to make these things happen. Courtney and I truly are in the world to change business for good. That's why we walked away from our corporate jobs and decided to come and spread ourselves around a little, share the love with other organizations to help you create these things in your organizations. One of the most comprehensive ways we do that, and this would be a step 3 item in creating a movement, is we have a comprehensive leadership learning program called The Truth of Leading Others. Bold statement, you might say. That we have found the truth of leading others. But what that's really getting at is this idea that at the bottom of everything, there's only so many things that it really takes, those substantive things that it really takes to lead others, that forms how you show up in every moment. And this program gets at all of those things, drills into all of those things, and we have some fun with it. So I think you would also love how we've crafted the program. We don't do things like invent problems for people to solve. No, you've got enough problems without us making up pretend problems for you to figure out. We don't do things like role plays and things like that, because role plays, the reason they don't work in the classroom is they are devoid of the actual emotion that happens out in the wild, back on the job. So they don't really work. So we've tried to also create some really great learning science in all of this. We have some short learning sessions. We target the things that are the essential truths of leading others. We focus on habit. We talk to you about your habits. We assume you want to be a great leader if you're sitting in our classroom. So we have you think about that. We have you think about, what does it mean for you to be a great leader? And then we help you pick apart all the habits that get in the way of you being that person that you want to be. So we sort of focus from that angle, and we teach thinking. I mean, you're like we've mentioned, there's plenty of techniques sprinkled in and tactics. But the core of what we do is we teach you how to think like a leader. We get people to be prepared to walk into any interaction with any employee and show up thinking like a leader. So that when you change your thinking, you change how you feel. When you change how you feel, you change what you do. That's how we get to creating new leadership behavior, is we ask you to back up and change your thinking. And that requires a lot of self-reflection, a lot of thinking about what is unique about you. How are you behaving? What are my blind spots? So there's a lot of focus on that. And we put learners on the hook. We put them on the hook by giving them some experiments. That's the most fun part of our programming, is we give them experiments. Remember when you were in sociology and you had to do social experiments? We do something a little bit like that, only they're not disruptive to your workplace. It's not weird things like not turning around in an elevator. That's just creepy. We give people experiments to do back on the job, in the wild, as we say. Take this and try this at home. And we call it an experiment because experiment conjures up the feeling of, this might not work. This could be really awkward. This might blow up in my face. Actually, nothing will blow up, I promise you that. But we give people experiments to go and try new things back on the job. And we put them on the hook by, in true experiment fashion, you've got to write up their results. Tell me what happened. What did you learn? Turn that into your instructor and you'll get some feedback. So we have unique programming, targeting leadership in a unique way. So that's one of the programs that we're most proud of. And I hope you take a look at it. And I think we'll leave you with just a reminder of all of the programming that we offer, or like a good buffet of the things that we offer, that we'd love to hear from you. And I think we'll just open it up to some questions and or just other thoughts that you have. Courtney, I don't know if you have anything else to add as we
No,
open
just if you
time
have
for
not
questions.
checked out Jack, I didn't mention anything about Jack Chat or Shotcast. If you're not following those, do that. The person who runs our social media is going to shoot me because I'm not going to be able to tell you. She doesn't actually shoot me, but she'll be disappointed. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and you can get our recent episodes of Jack Chat, which is our Jackie doing her 2-minute spiel. If you've not seen Jack Chat, please check it out for a little levity in your day. And then Shotcast, we just talk about topics that are meaningful in business and of the day. So you can get a 2-minute lesson and thought provoker for what's going on in your business. So just really good ways to stay connected and learn more from us throughout your day. Does anyone have any questions or comments for us? All right. Well, we will
Dan,
hang
I'm
on
just
in
looking
case
at, I'm
someone
sorry, I
just-
was just looking at Dan's comment in
Yeah.
the chat, and I'm not surprised to see you sort of tune in on that. This is Dan's comment about asking leaders to ask themselves of how are they living up to expectations. One of the things that we talk about a lot in our classrooms is you've got to start with self-reflection. You've got to start with the ability to be completely honest with yourself. And one of the tips, I'll give you this tip. One of the techniques I share in the classroom is self-reflection is best done by yourself. I know that sounds like really obvious, but the minute you include someone, like feedback style, you'll start to protect your ego and justify your actions. And so learning this art of, am I really living up to who I am, to my values, to this great leader that I want to be? Learning that art, we talk about that a lot in the classroom. I don't know, Dan, if you wanted to add any other insights to your comment there.
No, that's kind of what we're multiple years into, kind of going into our leadership journey and such. And it is one of those things that when you said the 6 to 9 months of, we need to be thinking about, are we making that change? And if we're not, then also not just try to push harder where there might not be the energy, but self-reflect upon our own group to make sure if there's changes that we need to make, because things happen. So, things become hard or people don't continue down that path. So we just need to re-energize ourselves, I think.
Well, and the thing you have to understand about behavior change is it's super easy when it's new, and it's super easy when it's easy.
Right.
So as we've been at it a while, and as things get harder, when we're under stress, our brains actually revert to the neural pathways of our original programming. So we can say all day long that, we want to listen more, but when the customer order is late, the delivery's got quality issues, we have a target to meet, and I'm under a huge amount of stress, I ain't listening right now. Even though we said we were going to do that. And so the behaviors we want to create are the best version of ourselves. And it really takes a lot of practice, habit, commitment, recommitment to say, like, yeah, I'm so good at this listening thing that I even can listen when I'm stressed out, when I'm scared, when I'm under pressure. I still find a way to listen. That takes practice, especially from an organization who all of our norms before were just to tell and run, right? Go bark orders and get on to the next thing. That's different. I don't know if that's a good example, but you get my point, hopefully. That's why it takes a long-term commitment. Very
Right.
cool.
Any other comments or questions for us before we go? You are welcome, Stephanie Kemmer, for the enthusiasm and the real world perspective. We have plenty of that, indeed. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today. I hope you do continue to check us out. Yeah, do check out Jack Chat. I have endless energy for embarrassing myself on video. So please take a look at those. And I hope to see you again next time when we get together and talk about, I don't know, it'll be intriguing to see what we talk about next. I'm not sure.
But I think we're going to talk about coaching in December.
Oh boy, you
teaser.
won't be able to shut me up on that one.
I know. God, give her a microphone.
Thank you so
All
much,
right.
you guys.
Thank you all.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Have a good day.
You
Bye.
too. Bye.
Bye-bye.